hurting things and could damage plants, in some cases could kill them. And this is a very interesting thing that Spindrift also went into, not only the positive healing aspects of prayer that you get from non-goal-directed prayer, where you're infusing quality into the thought system, but then you have people who have non-quality or no quality. They're doing something the opposite. They're just sending psychically negative energy to the plants. And so we also studied at Spindrift negative prayer as well as positive prayer.
Well, would a negative prayer be something like a curse?
If the person is intentionally doing it, yes. But you could also have, as we found out in the goal-directed prayer, people are praying for what they want, and that isn't always what is needed in a situation. You're interfering with what you might say the divine plan is, because you're putting your own agenda in there, and that unintentionally messes things up. I think you probably have run into this, and I'm sure your listeners have run into this, where people initially say, I got the answer to my prayer, and I really worked on that, and I wanted this, I wanted that, and then later on they found out what they got was not the right thing. It was not what they needed. It should have been something else. It's a funny thing. At the time you think you got the right answer, but actually you manipulated the answer, and it wasn't in the long run what you needed to have happen.
Hence the saying, be careful for what you ask.
You have it. And I might add to that, you probably have interviewed Larry Dawsey, Dr. Larry Dawsey.
Yes, definitely.
He wrote a book called that, Be Careful What You Pray For, and the whole book is on negative prayer. Mm-hmm. That's an entirely interesting topic, and so you have to be very careful what you pray for. And so people take a number of these tests, and then you add the results together, and you come up with it. You have to do a number of them, because sometimes even when somebody's good at what they're doing, or either way, goal-directed or non-goal-directed, they have times when they're not going to get a result. So you've got to do a number of tests and add all the data together. You were asking me, too, what could be behind the power of prayer.
Yes.
And I have an analogy, if this is any help to anybody. If you've ever been to Florida, I don't think you have them up where you are. Do you have manatees in the water up there? I don't think so.
No, we don't. No, it's way too cold.
I think you need warm water for that.
Yeah.
Well, what's cool about the manatee is it can live in both salt water and fresh water. Mm-hmm. And when it swims in the salt water, the manatee often takes on barnacles that leach on it. The barnacles can interfere with its swimming ability. When manatees enter the fresh water, the barnacles fall off. Prayer accidents, hurt, and other problems, they stick to us like barnacles. Mm-hmm. Then prayer pours in fresh water, what we would call quality. Our subconscious mind gets soaked with fresh water, and the barnacles or problems begin to fall off. It's because prayer has an ordering influence on us, on systems, and on what we're praying for. Prayer promotes order, and that's the thing we're looking for in the test, our evidence of order appearing.
Interesting. So is it possible to say that prayer is more real on an everyday basis than we've ever imagined before, and we're just scratching the surface of it now?
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I think a lot of us are walking around and we're having miracles and good things and evidences of psychic and spiritual things happen all the time. We're just kind of not aware of it. It's happening kind of in an impersonal way, and we're just not alert to it.
Right.
There are some people who are alert to these things. It's just like somebody who walks down the street and stops and looks at a beautiful tree, then somebody else just keeps on walking. Or somebody's just more alert. But yes, I think these things are happening all the time. And of course, we have a lot of things in our culture and our upbringing and our education that want to also suppress it. Because none of us like to feel foolish.
Right.
I mean, there are times we're in situations, I can think times I'm in situations where I have a hard time speaking to anybody about this because they think I'm a nut. So I get around that by assuming they think that to start with, so I don't care. Just assume they think you're a nut, then you're okay. But if you're worried about how the people thinking about you, you won't be able to express yourself. And I'll tell you something that happened recently, Rob, and I still don't have the full story on this. I have several skeptic atheist friends, and they're pretty good people. Something must have happened to them in their childhood. I don't know. But anyway, one told me recently that they had an epiphany. They had a spiritual and psychic experience, and it's really bothering them. They don't know what to do with it. They said they're just not able to tell their wife. He can't tell his wife about it, and he can't tell his friends. I suppose his friends are skeptics. But it's something that's really been eating at it, and he just wanted to share it with me. Now, he hasn't told me what the experience was, but I think that there's an example of something that's kind of interesting that ties in with your question. Now, here's somebody who was aware of something happening, and it was contrary to what they believed. So what are they going to do?
So how do you deal with skepticism, Bill?
Well, I think it's a necessary part of the human experience because they certainly do keep us on our toes, don't they?
They sure do. They sure do.
Yes, and there's healthy skepticism and there's unhealthy skepticism, and it's the unhealthy that we find unpleasant. And, of course, Spindrift and the founders in our group have tried to approach several people about that. On the history page on the website, by the way, when you go to spindriftresearch.org, if you look under history, on the right, there's a column there that was kind of an interesting, humorous example of talking to two skeptical scientists and how they responded to the Spindrift story. I was one of the few times where I got worked up and upset, where the other people at Spindrift were laughing about it, but it just shows you how they think, no matter what. You just can't deal with some people. And there was something about Rupert Sheldrake in a debate. I have not seen that. He debated a skeptic one-on-one in a place. Did you hear about that?
No, I didn't.
I think this was recently, and I read it. I just read a paragraph where Rupert Sheldrake said that when he was showing the evidence for psychic phenomena in a video on the screen, the skeptic sat there and looked the other way. He wouldn't even look at the screen. So it's just the way some people are. What can you do?
Now, what is the psychic warfare on caused by the defense mechanism?
Well, the third contribution to science that we think Spindrift has made is that the plain biologists and Spindrift have done elaborate work with the defense mechanisms of the mind. It's kind of a mathematical thing. It's kind of hard to explain, but I'll give it to you in wording.
Okay.
We have, first of all, goal-directed prayer and non-goal-directed prayer. Okay, fine. Well, then we have this thing that kind of overarches the whole experiences that we've had, and a lot of people have had. Why is it that, and like you were saying, that there's psychic phenomena going around us all the time. There's things happening to us all the time. Then sometimes we have direct experiences. We're real excited about them. Then they fade away, or we change the details, or they get suppressed. I even had the experience of one gal who shared a tremendous experience she had, and a year later I brought it up to her, and she said it wasn't true. I was doing something to her. She was real mad at me for being it. Never happened. Now, how could something like that go out of her mind so quickly and her turn on me like that? You know. And the thing is that our defense mechanisms are supposed to protect us from extreme experiences and strange experiences. And those of us, probably your listeners, are probably immune to this to some extent. But a lot of people, when they have these experiences, their defense mechanisms go into action, and they work to undo the importance of what happened to us, or change the details so much that by the time, if we choose to remember the experience, what we repeat is a completely different experience, and then still we're not telling the truth then. So defense mechanisms tend to not want us to get too involved in the paranormal because they think it'll lead us into wasting a lot of our time when we should be productive and work with our families and go to regular jobs and things. And I will say that I do know some people that have had extraordinary experiences, and it's changed the world so much that it ends in divorce, it ends in them losing their jobs, and they get into other things. So there is something to it where you have to have a balance between the material world and the psychic and spiritual world. But the defenses try to keep us having a normal, balanced experience, and so we don't get too much into that. So the warfare is that you and your listeners, myself, and a lot of us, we want to remember our experiences, and we want to be accurate about them, and we want to have more. But our own subconscious defense mechanisms are working against us, so we can't make it too real, and we certainly can't find ways to prove it. It'll certainly mess us up if we want to pin it down.
Bill, what was it that made you believe so much in the power of prayer that you're working so hard to investigate it and to let others know about it?
I think that I was extremely fortunate how I was brought up. I was brought up in a very open-minded academic atmosphere on the North Shore of Chicago. Plus, as a child, I had a lot of psychic and spiritual experiences. and they kind of diminished when I reached age 15. Now, I'm still working on it, but I do know, and we've all heard, that younger people tend to have more of these abilities than older people. The culture gets to you, and pressure gets to you, and so on. But every time I would talk to somebody about it, it wasn't that they were skeptical or disbelieved. It's just the atmosphere I was brought in around professors and real smart people, and it was also a heavily Jewish area too, and the people were just super intelligent, that they would debate you. They'd start debating you. So I realized that, and it wasn't skeptical. They just, they would question you. So I realized that if I was ever going to be seriously taken seriously on these things in the future, that I would have to find ways of giving evidence for what I believed. And so that's how I started looking for people who are interested in combining religion, spirituality, science, parapsychology, consciousness research, aspects of psychology. And I fortunately heard about this father and son, Bruce and John Klingbeil, the Christian scientists who were working on this, and they lived 3 towns over from mine.
Gosh.
I couldn't believe it. You would think they could have been any place in the whole United States or around the world, but they were living near me. So there was synchronicity. Oh my gosh.
Bill's.
So I got involved in their research and was pretty excited, and met a lot of people through that. There are people who are interested in these things. They have a hard time with their peers and their families, but there are people out there, and it's been very exciting. I think the Chicago area is full of so many interesting things. Period. But this is one of them. There's a lot of people with very curious, investigative minds in the Chicago area. So that's how it happened.
All right, Bill.
A lot of things come from childhood. Would you say your interest came from childhood, too? Most people tell me it's something happened in childhood, too.
All right, Bill, we've got to take our final break. Please stand by. Exonation. Bill Sweet is our special guest. www.spindriftresearch.org. That's spindriftresearch.org. Once again, www.spindriftresearch.org. I'll be back with Bill Sweet on the other side of this commercial break as the X Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't forget our 2 new pages, the one for UFOs, www.xzonenews.com, and for all the stories from around the world on 2012, www.xzone2012.com. That's 2012.com. I'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, here in the X Zone.
Think of us, dear. I say a little prayer for you. At work, I just take time, and all through my coffee break time, I say a little prayer for you. Forever, forever, you stay in my heart, and I will love you forever and ever. We never will part.
With each new extreme weather event or terrorist act, it becomes increasingly obvious that we live in uncertain and challenging times. We all buy car insurance. Why not collapse and catastrophe insurance? Matthew Stein, an MIT-trained engineer and green builder, has written 2 outstanding books to help people prepare, plan for, and deal with everything from minor situations lasting a few days to full-on collapse. Matt's first book, When Technology Fails, is a manual for self-reliance, sustainable living, and surviving the long emergency. This massive book covers the gamut from first aid and emergency preparedness to alternative healing, renewable energy, primitive living skills, and 18th century technologies that could be critical to your comfort and survival in a long-lasting crisis. Matt's second book, When Disaster Strikes, is a comprehensive emergency preparedness handbook and survival guide. When Disaster Strikes is an essential item for every family's go bag. Both books are available at all usual sources. There's a wealth of totally free information posted at whentechfails.com, and author-signed copies may be purchased at mattstein.com. That's www.whentechfails.com and www.mattstein.com.